Just as AI will be broadly adopted across almost all sectors in private industry and in the private sector, I fully expect that in government, you'll see an equally broad spectrum of AI application and uses from national security kind of scenarios, the old world, my old world that I used to work in, from intelligence to the military side, cybersecurity. I think you're clearly going to see it in the research and development kinds of things the government does. I hope you're going to see it applied in how we can potentially make government processes more efficient, faster. The government has a lot of data, has a lot of information. I hope we're going to use it as a tool to generate more knowledge and more insight from some of that data that's designed to focus on assisting the taxpayer. That's the role of government broadly, as well as to defend the nation and secure the safety and security of its citizens. I hope you're going to see all of that. From me and my particular background, you're seeing AI already used from code writing to trying to do scenario planning against potential malware development, trying to take a look at how you can use AI to anticipate adversary behavior. What targets might an adversary go after? How might they do that from a cyber perspective? As I said, you're seeing code, you're seeing malware development done through AI. I think it's going to be pretty broad. Remember, AI at its heart is fundamentally underpinned by the model or models you use and the data you feed the models. And so I do think that there's value in sharing your algorithms or models and then asking yourself, so what data is most applicable to the problems that you're trying to create solutions for? Put another way, I can remember previously thinking about, so how might you defeat AI or how might you manipulate AI's outcomes? And I always thought, okay, we've either got to try to feed it data that we think is going to bias it towards a particular outcome or insight, or we need to manipulate the algorithms to try to drive it towards a particular outcome, so to speak. Now, both of those challenges are significantly difficult. There's no doubt about that. But I think that's another reason why I would hope that in government, as is in the private sector, to be honest, you'd see pretty broad sharing of models and data sets. I would be looking at what are problem sets that tend to have broad applicability across multiple organizations, where in some ways you're trying to find a common approach, you're trying to find a common set of insights that then can shape the strategy you're going to use to address whatever the issue, problem, or focus is that you as an organization are particularly tasked with. So medicine, I think, is really interesting. I think that'll be one area where commonality will be something that's viewed as a positive. Interestingly, the inverse is also true. There's going to be areas where diversity is considered, like cybersecurity. I would be interested in multiple perspectives, multiple different insights. So I would, in that area, be urging, hey, let's think about how we can potentially look at multiple models with potentially different data sets to see what kind of spectrum of insights that generates. So clearly, when it comes to both the generation of knowledge and insight, as well as the sharing of knowledge and insight and the sharing or collaboration between multiple parties on the data in which that insight is based, clearly privacy and security are going to be core characteristics that are of great concern, particularly in a democratic society. It's one of the reasons why I think one of the implications of AI, for example, is going to be over time. I think consumers are going to want to have a level of insight about, okay, so what data did AI use to generate this solution? What's the basis of this recommendation or this insight that I'm being given? It's one reason why I think tools that are designed to enhance security and collaboration, because you want to have both. You want to be able to share, you want to be able to collaborate, you want to be able to access data remotely from multiple entities, but at the same time, you want to do it in a very secure method. And as data becomes ever more powerful in business models, as data becomes ever more powerful through the use of AI and other technologies that are going to enable us to learn from that data, the protection of that data, and the ability to collaborate securely, I think becomes really important. That's going to grow in importance, not lessen over time. Remember, one of the responsibilities for government and data is protecting that data. So one of the implications of that idea of data protection is, hey, I'm just not going to allow, I might have it at one part of the government, for example, that I was responsible for in intelligence or military. That doesn't mean I'm going to automatically share it with every other segment of the government. And if I'm going to share and collaborate with other elements of government, I want to make sure that not only is it a conscious decision, i.e., not something that's just done spuriously or automatically, but I also want to make sure that I got a good, secure, collaborative mechanism with which to do that. We're in a bit of a paradox to me. Our models, whether they be economic, whether they be associated with national security, whether they be associated with executing the elements of governance, whether they be in providing, maximizing, if you will, the provision of services and support from the private sector to consumers. All of those things are increasingly built on the idea that access to ever greater levels of data and greater amounts of data will generate better outcomes. At the same time, as we're building these foundations that are built on concentrations of massive amounts of data, the movement of massive amounts of data, the potential sharing of massive amounts of data, increasingly, particularly in democratic societies, more and more concern about privacy, security, data sovereignty. So we've got a little bit of friction there to me. And so one of the things I think is going to be very interesting as we go forward is I don't think we're going to change those models. And I don't think we're going to do away with very legitimate concerns around privacy and security. Therefore, it's what are the tools available to us to minimize or reduce that friction between these two very important needs on the one hand and very valid concerns on the other. And that's going to be very interesting to watch. And Duality is an example of a company that's trying to figure out how do we reduce that friction? How do we enable both of these concerns or ideas to be addressed?